Hello, I'm Rick Sisk.
And I'm Shelby Styron. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of CHTV here at the Student Television Network National Convention in historic Dallas, Texas.
This is actually the first time that STN has been held in Dallas. The previous time has been held in Anaheim, California, or Orlando, Florida.
Now we go to reporter Ashley Bingham and photographer Ashley Bronson with the details.
Dallas, Texas, a mecca for rich culture, lively entertainment, and historic architecture, is now the host city for the 2012 Student Television Network National Convention.
We started 9 years ago, and I don't even know what year that would be, but 9 years ago, 2003, in LA. And that was our first convention. Next year we will celebrate our 10th anniversary back in LA. So in terms of history, we're 9 years of solid growth.
STN was founded originally because there just wasn't a place for broadcasting teachers and students to just be together and do broadcasting. Broadcasting has always been kind of the stepchild of newspaper and yearbook and literary magazine. You know, they never know what to do with us. So we thought, a bunch of us got together and thought it would be great if we could do have one just for us.
Well, in a new venue in Dallas 2012, STN partnered up with a new vendor. U.S. Education TV now is able to reach those not attending the STN conference. They allow schools to share live events online.
We are doing 2 streams. We have an actual live show, which will include the STN opening ceremonies, the closing ceremonies, the film festival, some rodeo coverage, interviews with students and STN board members, the whole 9 yards. And then our other stream includes some of the presenters, one presenter from each breakout session. That'll be streamed live so students back at school or at other schools that were unable to attend STN, they can watch and join in this as well.
In 2003, broadcasting and film students from across the United States came together to showcase their talents in ways never before possible. Now, 9 years later, in the heart of Dallas, Texas, history is being made. Reporting for CHTV at STN, I'm Ashley Bingham.
Moving to Dallas is a huge milestone for this convention.
Absolutely. Dallas is rich in American history, including the assassination of the former President John F. Kennedy. Reporter Shannon Osborne and photographer Caitlin Spencer found someone right here in Dallas who remembers that tragedy just as if it were yesterday.
I'm standing here at the corner of Houston Street where people drive by and don't give much thought to what happened nearly 50 years ago. But for one Dallas resident, the tragic event of November 22nd, 1963 is still fresh on her mind. Dallas resident Barbara Ware was a senior in high school at the time President Kennedy was shot. Before it even hit headlines, people were already talking about the tragic event.
The principal of the school actually made an announcement in the school building, but because my English class was in a portable building, they came around and sent runners out to the classrooms and told each teacher, and the teachers told us. My brother, who was about 5 years younger, had gotten out of school and ridden the bus to Love Field to see the president come in with one of his friends.
Although tourists wanted to see the scene of the shooting, Dallas residents tried to stay away from the memories.
Dallas was accused of being the city that murdered the president, and it really wasn't the city or the people of Dallas that did it. What I remember most is the day that Oswald was shot.
As students were getting ready for a school opera, on the TV was Oswald coming out of the jail. This was the first time he was seen since the shooting. It was then that Oswald was shot by his killer, a moment rarely caught live during the 60s.
You have to remember that in the 60s, people made film. They took it and had it developed and then showed it on television. You didn't see things as they happened, but that happened live in front of our eyes. Even though it's been nearly 50 years since the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, for residents like Barbara Ware, the memory is fresh on their hearts and minds. Reporting for CHTV at STN, I'm Shannon Osborne.
Even though we read about this tragedy in our history books, I know at least I'll never be able to understand it like those who lived it and experienced it.
Speaking of which, somebody you'll never read about in your history books is Charles Bond, a World War II aviation hero whose hometown is right here in Dallas, Texas. We go to reporter Colton Tripp and photographer Justin Wagnon for the story.
When it comes to Texas history, I'm sure you've heard of names like William Travis or Davy Crockett, but I'm almost certain that you've never heard of this Dallas hometown hero, Charles Bond.
Charles Bond was born in Dallas, Texas, where he stayed until he joined the U.S. military right after he graduated high school. His first deployment was in Japan during World War II, and he joined an elite air group known as the Flying Tigers. While serving in China, Charles Bond was shot down twice, once where his plane went up in flames and burning him, the other causing a head injury. He received a Purple Heart for both and later an Air Medal.
And as second in command of the group when his record was released, it was noticed when we read it that there was a personal note at the bottom by Claire Chenault commending him for his leadership qualities. Like a lot of great men, he was not one to toot his own horn very much. He continued to serve in World War II when he returned to the United States as the aide and pilot to Averell Harriman, who was the American ambassador to the Soviet Union at the time. And when he flew Harriman to Yalta for the conference, amongst the Big Three as it's known, he received a silver vase from the government there from the Shah of Iran. He continued his service throughout the Korean and Vietnam Wars, and during Vietnam, he was a two-star general in charge of the American Air Forces flying out of Thailand. It was in the early 80s. They took his diary from his experiences in China and turned it into a book that became a bestseller. And just prior to his death in, I think it was 2003, he was inducted into the National Aviation and Space Exploration Museum on their Wall of Heroes.
You may not have read about him in your history books, but Charles Bond changed American history through bravery, courage, and leadership. Reporting for CHTV at STN, I'm Colton Tripp.
That's some interesting historic trivia. Did you know right here in Dallas they have the Heritage Village, where they've actually relocated late 19th century houses into a park for the public to view?
No, I didn't know that.
Reporter Lauren Massey and photographer Colton Willett actually visited the park, and they have the details.
Thanks to a group of women here in downtown Dallas, Texas, lies Heritage Village at Old City Park, a popular venue for over 30 Victorian homes and businesses.
This 13 acres that we now have was the original City Park of Dallas. Started in 1880s. That was actually its name, City Park, because they didn't anticipate needing a second one. And they had not exactly a zoo, they called it the menagerie. Two of the favorite residents were a breeding pair of big bears who tended to escape from their makeshift cage and terrorize the local neighbors. They also had several wolves who weren't very popular because they howled all night and kept everybody awake.
After World War II, a group of women rescued Millermore Plantation by storing its pieces in a warehouse and consulting Ray Hubbard, president of the park board at that time. He agreed to the reconstruction of City Park, where it became the first of many buildings in the village.
And it was going to be torn down to create a parking lot. A group of ladies, most of them from the Founders Garden Club, very influential local social ladies, gathered together to save it. They mustered the power of the law and of their very influential husbands, and they managed to get control of the building. They took it apart piece by piece, labeling each one like a jigsaw puzzle, and stored it in a warehouse. They didn't know what they were going to do with it, but they sought the help of the city of Dallas, who decided that they had this empty park in a neighborhood that was going sort of down. It was not a very good neighborhood anymore, and perhaps just the thing to revitalize the park was to start a museum there.
Museum curator Evelyn Montgomery tells how visitors can participate in the history of Heritage Village.
You can tour our historic structures. You can see our farm animals, including our donkeys, Nip and Tuck, who sometimes are pulling a wagon. We have a working farmstead where they're growing crops, and they have chickens and sheep back there. And if you're lucky, one of our educators will be back there in full costume showing how you could spin your own yarn from your very own sheep. We also have various special events. If you check our website, www.dallasheritagevillage.org, we list the different activities, especially days for families to come out and do crafts and things like that.
Heritage Village will remain as one of the largest preservations of Dallas, Texas history. Reporting for CHTV at STN, I'm Lauren Massey.
It's truly amazing how in the middle of this huge modern city there's a preservation of 19th century life.
And history continues to be made every day in this incredible city. I'm Shelby Styron.
And I'm Rick Sisk.
Thank you again for joining us for this special edition of CHTV at the Student Television Network National Convention in historic Dallas, Texas.